Okay, great. Well, hello everyone. My name is Valerie Rosenblatt. I am an assistant professor here at San Francisco State University International Business Department. And today we'll be talking about Chapter 10 on global migration. Before we start though, I'd like for you to take a few minutes and take the cultural intelligence assessment. It's 10 questions that you need to answer on a scale from 1 to 5, strongly agree to strongly disagree. The cultural intelligence assessment is available on iLearn. After you answer the questions, please calculate your cultural intelligence score using the instructions in the assessment. It's fairly simple. I'll go over it in a little bit. In Chapter 10, Lechner talks about the relationship between migration and globalization. He starts with the details on the patterns of migration. He talks about who's moving, how people are moving, and why they're moving. He then spends quite a lot of time talking about how societies integrate migrants. There are different approaches that societies use. And Lechner discusses these approaches and some of the trade-offs of these approaches. He also discusses some of the challenges. One of the largest challenges that he discusses has to do with the societal identity, whether societies maintain the old identity or they allow the identity to evolve as the migrants join their society with new values, norms, and their cultural ideals. So I will review a little bit of this information with you today. I'll give you some new patterns, some information on new patterns of migration. I'll also just briefly touch on the integration approaches, but I would like to spend majority of the time answering the question, what migration means for you? And specifically, we'll look at how migration influences workplace diversity, and then how you can benefit from workplace diversity by developing your cultural intelligence. So let's look at some of the latest migration patterns first. About 232 million migrants live in our world today, which amounts to about 3.2% of the world population. The number of migrants has been rising, compared to 190 million in 2005 and 154 million in 1990. Generally, migrants tend to move from the south to north, from developing to the developed countries. However, recently we've been also seeing the move from the south to south increasing. Today, the north is home to about 136 million of migrants, compared to the south, where about 96 million migrants live. Large majority of the migrants are of working age, and about half of them are women. And that number has been changing drastically as the number of women migrants has been increasing over the last few decades. Half of the international migrants today live just in 10 countries. United States is home to the largest group of migrants, about 46 million. That is followed by Russia, Germany, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates. United States of America and United Arab Emirates have been experiencing the largest growth in migrant population over the last decade. Some of the top sending countries are Mexico, where leaving migrants today comprise about 10% of the current population. Also, Afghanistan, the Philippines, Morocco, Algeria. Today, in 2013, international migrants comprise about 11% of the US population. This number is just a little bit short of 13.2% of migrants. That was the population size in about 1920s during the largest second migrant wave into the United States. So societies take a number of different approaches to integrate migrants. For example, some societies take multiculturalism approach, also known as the cultural mosaic. This approach is based on equal respect of various cultures in the society. Societies that take this approach, such as Britain, as Lechner describes in the chapter, tend to integrate programs that recognize and positively accommodate cultural differences. Example of such programs could be multicultural and multilingual education. Other societies take the melting pot approach. This approach is based on maintaining strong original national culture and identity. Societies that take this approach generally pursue programs that ask immigrants to assimilate with the society. For example, common public education, where all the immigrants are encouraged to learn the society's language and values. The other approach that some societies take is ethnoculturalism approach. And this approach is also grounded in maintaining strong original culture and values. However, whether by design or not by design, a lot of these societies tend not to have any national program that is allowing to incorporate migrants into the society. So a lot of migrants tend to be marginalized. All of these different approaches have different trade-offs. And most all countries that deal with migration tend to face a number of challenges. As I already mentioned, one of the largest challenges that societies face is what to do with the societal identity, whether societies should maintain their strong original cultural identity or allow the new identity to evolve as migrants join the society. Here I have a short video that gives you a little bit of an example on how Germany has been dealing with migration. As Lechner describes in the chapter, Germany originally pursued the ethnocultural approach to migration. However, most recently, Germany has been pursuing the multiculturalism approach.
Send a message to all those who were previously regarded as foreigners in Germany. This is the third time the German government has invited representatives from immigrant communities to attend an integration summit. The idea behind it is to give immigrants and those of immigrant origin a sense of belonging. There's still a long way to go.
Migrants belong to our society, and they have to be able to identify with our institutions.
There was no talk of that back in the 1950s, when the first wave of immigrants started arriving in West Germany. The country's economy was growing rapidly, and it needed to expand its labor force. It advertised throughout the entire Mediterranean region. They came by train from Portugal, Spain, Greece, Yugoslavia, and increasingly from Turkey. For many of them, the Cologne-Deutz railway station was the starting point for a new life in a strange country. They had come to earn money, and the West Germans quickly coined a term for the new arrivals: guest workers.
The term guest worker is rather strange seen from today's perspective, because you don't ask guests to work. No one really knows who came up with this description, the bureaucrats in the German Labour Office or German politicians. Anyway, they assumed that they would leave again, that they were only temporary guests.
But in the end, the majority stayed. They went on to have children and grandchildren in a country that for years refused to accept them for what they were: immigrants. It was an idea alien to many German conservatives in particular.
Germany is not a country of immigration.
We will not vote in favor of a law that would increase immigration so much. The labor market shouldn't be opened up to foreign workers.
The aim of this law, I am convinced, is that Germany should become a modern, multicultural land of immigration. We don't want that.
This mantra-like repetition of the phrase, Germany is not a country of immigration, has deprived Germans of the chance to familiarize themselves with the idea of immigration, and the idea of things changing as a result of immigration. Instead, it has cemented the idea that the others would either conform or disappear.
Die anderen würden sich entweder anpassen oder wieder verschwinden.
Immigrants were often treated as second-class citizens. They did jobs Germans refused to do. They moved into flats that Germans would have shunned, and they were given no help integrating into German society. This West German news program from 1967 points out the lack of contact between West Germans and Turkish immigrants in their leisure time, and German prejudices against those newcomers.
Little has changed since then. These days you might see a few Germans at Turkish discos, but the two worlds have remained largely separate. In Berlin, migrants of Turkish origin have remained largely concentrated in certain districts, such as Neukölln or Kreuzberg. Even many of the younger generation feel more attached to Turkish traditions and the Turkish language than to the country in which they were born.
We hear things like, it's not practical, it's not obligatory to send your children to school. My daughter should grow up to be a good housewife and mother. What is the point of her going to school? Back home, children get married at the age of 12 or 14. Why is it wrong here? And so on and so forth. When people come out with such things, it reminds us that there are things going on here that we thought were resolved long ago in Germany.
Die wir eigentlich in Deutschland überwunden geglaubt haben.
The existence of parallel societies means some children of Turkish origin do not fully master the German language and have problems in school as a result. This is also one of the reasons for high rates of youth unemployment in the migrant community. Only 25% get offered an apprenticeship.
I fear that social tensions will increase if we don't succeed in correcting the mistakes of the past as quickly as possible, and with whatever means it takes, if it's not already too late.
Politicians are slowly getting the message. The Chancellor is keen to demonstrate social togetherness every year at the Integration Summit.
So, as we can see from the video, migration poses a number of interesting challenges for the societies to deal with. In the United States, we have been moving away from the melting pot approach that was prevalent in the early 20th century to the multiculturalism approach. And as we're going to the multiculturalism approach, we have done a lot of good work. However, as we can see by some of the most recent headlines in the news, and what Lechner talks about in the book, there's still a lot of challenges for us to deal with. Well, migration not only affects societies, but it oftentimes affects migrants themselves as well as the host and people. So let's talk a little bit about how migration affects you personally. Well, one way that migration may affect you personally is through workplace diversity. As migration is increasing, workplace diversity has also been increasing. As of 2011, immigrants account for about 16% of the current labor force in the US. Between 2000 and 2050, new immigrants and their children will account for 83% rise in the working age population. 30% of new small business owners are foreign-born. From 1990 to 2010, the number of foreign-born small business owners grew by almost 150%. So workplace diversity has been on the rise. Workplace diversity has a number of benefits and costs associated with it. Immigrants that join new workforces bring their own values, their norms and beliefs into the workplace. And with that come various different perspectives and worldviews, which often tend to result in greater creativity and innovation at the workplace. It also tends to reduce groupthink, so we can make better decisions. However, at the same time, different perspectives and different worldviews tend to result in difficulty in communication, greater stress and turnover at work, and the increasing amount of time it takes to make decisions. So, what can we do to benefit from diversity and avoid its cost? Well, what my research shows is that one of the ways we can do that is through developing your cultural intelligence, or also known as the ability to adapt and function effectively in culturally diverse contexts. As a type of intelligence, cultural intelligence involves a number of different dimensions: knowledge, metacognition, motivation, and behavioral skills. The knowledge dimension of cultural intelligence includes understanding of what culture is and what culture is not. It also involves knowledge of different values, norms, customs, and rules of different societies. In addition, it involves understanding of various cultural systems: economic, legal, educational, and political. The more you know about different values and different customs, as well as different systems, the better you are likely to function in culturally diverse contexts. The metacognition part of cultural intelligence involves higher cognitive processes, such as awareness of cultural assumptions, also known as stereotypes, for example, active challenging of cultural assumptions, and adjustment of cultural assumptions. For example, many people share different stereotypes about different cultural groups. One of the stereotypes I hear quite a lot, being from Russia myself, is that Russians tend to be pretty stern, not smiling a lot. We see a lot of pictures of Russian being grumpy on the pictures. And so a lot of people tend to think of Russians as stern and unhappy. However, I've also heard from a lot of my friends who've met Russians personally that they tend to be some of the warmest people, very hospitable even to strangers, really fun and friendly. So as you develop an ability to adjust your stereotypes as you meet individual people and rethink your stereotypes, you're more likely to become more effective in culturally diverse contexts. The motivation dimension of cultural intelligence involves drive, enthusiasm to partake in cross-cultural contact. A lot of cross-cultural contact has to do with the unknown and unexpected. So naturally, people tend to experience a lot of stress. We know this stress also as cultural shock. So in addition to having a drive and enthusiasm to partake in cross-cultural contact, the motivation aspect of cultural intelligence also involves ability to deal with stress and persevere through stress that is associated with cross-cultural contact. Finally, the behavioral skills aspect of cultural intelligence involves capability to use different verbal and nonverbal behavior appropriately in cross-cultural situations. We all know that there are different jests that societies might use. Some of these jests, like this one for example, might mean positive things in one society and negative things and even offensive things in other societies. So you have to be very careful and have good understanding of what gestures to use, what words to use, when and how. And the better your understanding is, the better you are likely to adjust and function effectively in different societies. So now that you know a little bit about what cultural intelligence is and all of its dimensions, let's go back to your assessment of cultural intelligence that you've taken in the beginning of this lecture. It's available on iLearn, so if you still haven't taken, please stop the video, take it, and come back to us. So the cultural assessment involves 10 questions that you've answered on a scale from 1 to 5, strongly agree to strongly disagree. These are the 10 questions, just to make sure that you have the same questions. Now, as you answer these questions, we ask you to calculate your cultural intelligence score.
Whereas the Chinese feel you're questioning their generosity if you do. At HSBC, we never underestimate the importance of local knowledge. which is why we have local banks staffed by local people in over 80 countries across the globe. HSBC, the world's local bank.
This is from advertising by the HSBC, but definitely shows some of the disconfirmation that you might experience when you have business meetings and business interactions with folks from other cultures. So what happens when we experience this disconfirmation is that we typically tend to become more motivated to find out what is going on. How come I'm not understanding what is happening? How come people behave differently from my expectations? And so that motivation and drive that you're experiencing is helping you to develop your motivation dimension of cultural intelligence. As you become more motivated to find out about all these differences, your awareness tends to increase. You start to observe other people more. You also start to reflect on what is going on and why people behave differently. Through increasing awareness and reflection, you are working on developing your metacognitive aspect of cultural intelligence. As you observe all these cultural differences, you make notes and you learn about cultural differences. You are working on developing your knowledge aspect of cultural intelligence. As you're starting to build a collection of all the differences across cultures, you're also starting to think about patterns, general abstract categories, all the similarities and differences between cultures. And that also contributes to the cultural general knowledge aspect of cultural intelligence, part of the knowledge dimension too. And finally, as you partake in contact, oftentimes you get to experience different gestures, different words, different behaviors. Some of them work, some of them don't. And so as you practice those, you also develop the behavioral aspect of cultural intelligence. So as you can see, your personalized contact with members of different cultures is very effective in developing all aspects of cultural intelligence. And our research had confirmed that empirically. So now you're probably thinking, well, how can I get more involved with people from different cultures? Luckily, we live in an area where opportunities are all around us. Look around you at SFSU. There are people from all different cultures here. So I encourage you to join teams in your class. They have exchange students on teams. They have students from all different cultures. This will give you really good experience of meeting the new people, learning about their cultures, and practicing your cultural intelligence skills. You can become friends with an exchange student. This will be great for them because they will learn about the host culture, and this will be a great opportunity for you to, again, practice your motivational aspect, metacognition, behavioral, and cognitive aspect of cultural intelligence. You can volunteer at some of the ethnic community centers. You can also volunteer at organizations that cater to the ethnic communities. And last and not least, you can travel, study abroad, and all of these opportunities are available here at SFSU. So now that you know about cultural intelligence and a little bit of migration, let's summarize everything that we've talked about, and then I have an exercise for you. So what we've talked about today is that migration is on the rise. Migration poses various challenges to the migrants themselves and to the host society. However, there are various ways to deal with these challenges, and societies have been working very hard on that. But we as people can also do something about that by developing our personal cultural intelligence. United States is one of the most diverse societies, hosting the largest number of migrants in the world. So there are many opportunities for practicing your cultural intelligence here. There are many benefits and costs associated with cultural intelligence. Workplace diversity is very closely related to workplace diversity is very closely related to migration. And there are many costs and benefits associated with the workplace diversity. And you can reap the most benefits as well as avoid most cost by developing your cultural intelligence. Now, here's a quick exercise for you. I'd like for you to arrange for a personalized contact with members of a culture that you have never met before. I'd like for you to think of a contact that would be somewhat lengthy, 3+ hours. And it has to be with a culture that you haven't met before, meaning, say for example, you've heard that there are some folks in your class from Laos, and you've met them before, but you've never had a personalized face-to-face contact. That would be a good group of people to meet with. There are a number of conditions that you need to follow as you are organizing this contact. One, it has to be, as I mentioned already, personalized, face-to-face contact. So maybe you can go shopping together. Maybe you can volunteer together at a local organization. Maybe you can just go to the beach, walk the beach, do a little cleanup at the beach, do something good. Also, you need to share a common purpose, such as cleaning the beach or shopping, where you have a common purpose of making a particular purchase. Also, it's important to have equal status between members. So find someone just like you, maybe a student, someone similar age to you. And finally, this has to be, of course, legal, safe contact that follows SFSU conduct code. As you complete this exercise, I'd like for you to do a little bit of reflection in a writing exercise. In this writing exercise, please apply what you have learned about cultural intelligence in this lecture to your contact. Think about what was the level of cultural intelligence for you and your cross-cultural friends. How cultural intelligence influenced your contact. Were there any successes or difficulties during your contact? And what role did cultural intelligence play in those successes and difficulties? Finally, if you feel that after the contact, your level of cultural intelligence was increased, what played a role in that? What were the factors that helped your cultural intelligence develop? That's it. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.